Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Giselle, my pronouns are they, them, and I am here to share my cross-stitching with you from the last 2 weeks. I ended up getting a good amount of stitching done. I did around 9,000 stitches and I stitched for 32 hours and 40 minutes. So I have a lot to talk about, but firstly, really quick, I wanted to just say thank you first off, everybody who's commented on my last few videos in general since my return to Flosstube. I just really appreciate the warm welcome back. And then secondly, especially thank you everybody who commented on my last video. I just appreciate the warmth and love and support. Thank you so much. But let's talk about everything I've stitched. So I have some finishes, some fully finished objects, and then yeah, just some exciting stitching. I'm really happy with what I got done this last couple weeks, and I'm gonna go from the projects that I worked the least on to the projects that I worked the most on, so there are some good amounts of progress right at the very end. I worked on 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 things. So first off, an update on my tiny stitching. I ended up working for 45 minutes, which is 2.29% of my stitching time on my tiny stitching. Somebody commented on my most recent video. I think your name was Carrie, maybe? I'm so sorry if it wasn't. The last couple weeks were very hard mentally, so my brain is a little fuzzy, but if that's her name, I apologize, but thank you so much. They gave me the recommendation to check out Kaylee Cross Stitching's channel. I will leave both of them linked down below, because I believe her name is Carrie. She had a channel as well, and I enjoyed watching her video, her most recent video, but I ended up taking her recommendation and checking out Kaylee Cross Stitching's video as well. I had already done the stitching that I'm about to show you, but I learned some really good things from Kaylee's video, most recent video about tiny stitching, and so that was a wealth of knowledge. I really appreciate you letting me know about that. But let's talk about my tiny stitching. So in my last video, I had talked about how I'd bought these frames that were about this big, and I wanted to do some stitching and put them in it. And I did, and I'm going to show you a picture because I have them here, but you're not going to be able to see them. This is what I stitched. So I stitched a thistle, I have stitched a sunflower, and then this is a thistle leaf. These are from the same pattern, and then this is from a different pattern. These are all from braceletbook.com. I will leave all of these patterns linked down below, and I just chose my own threads for them. But this one, so I've learned some interesting things from these. I'll show you how big they are in a second. But I'm still working on such a small scale, so these are 46 count 1/1 half cross. And you can really see the half cross on them when the stitches aren't all smushed together. And I am still learning kind of how to control that and control how I want my stitches to look at that scale. So there are some things I would do differently now, but I didn't know, and I don't care enough to correct it. I think these show my journey, and I think I will get much better at tiny stitching as we go along, especially after watching Kaylee's video, learning about the weights of thread. Now I know what threads to buy. I have some 56 count that I did try to stitch on in December, and I hated it because the thread that I have, I think, was just far too thick. So now I know what thread to get for 56 count, and I'm excited to try that again. Anyway, these ones are only on 46 though. So here, this half cross is not, since it's not close, meshed with these other ones, it's disconnected. So I wish that I had done that half cross going the other direction, and it would have brought it together more. This one is stitched on the angle, which is how the pattern asked it to be, which I think ended up turning out very nice. And then this one, all of these were pointed very sharp at the top of the thistle. So I ended up doing full crosses at the top of the thistle and then a full cross at the bottom just to square it off. And I think that worked out very well. So I was already learning as I was going with these. But I love them so much. Okay, so anyway, here they are, my tiny little cross stitches. So here's the thistle. And it will not, I don't think it will focus, but. And I talked about thistles last week, and I will talk about it a little bit more in a second. Here is the sunflower. This is my favorite that I ended up stitching. It made me so happy. And then here is the thistle leaf. And I'm glad that I did them. So how I ended up finishing them is so one, these are not the frame colors. The frames that I bought came in a pack with a bright gold color, a bright silver, and like a gunmetal color. So I ended up taking, I think, what are the bright silvers, and spray painting these with like a brownish black color. And then before cutting these out, I went around cutting out the pattern or the stitching. I ended up going around them with fray check. I actually ended up doing it with a paintbrush because if you just pour the fray check on, it's not enough control. So I went in with a very, very fine paintbrush. I don't know, probably like a 1/16 of an inch away from my stitching. Like I was very close to my stitching. Then I went around with the fray check. It might have been further than that, like an 1/18 of an inch or whatever, but going far away from or close to my stitching, but far enough away that I didn't bleed in, and just like paint around with the fray check and then further out or whatever, so that wherever I cut it, my stitches wouldn't fray. And then I have on the back of these just some cardstock, just that I got from a granola box that I had finished, and I ended up painting that the same color as the fabric. So I traced around the frame, cut out the paper, and then using like a miniature crafting glue that I had, I ended up painting that onto the frame, pressing it on to the fabric, and then pressing the fabric onto the paper, and then cutting off the excess of the fabric. I hope that made sense. I stacked it. I didn't actually put any glue on the stitches. I only put the glue on the frame, and then the glue did go on the stitches on the back, but not on the front. I hope that all made sense. And there's my tiny stitching update, and I really, really love them. I think they're just darling, and it was like a fun process to figure out stitching that small to fit in the frames. I'm glad I figured it out on my own, but now I'm glad that I have the knowledge from Kaylee to keep going forward about even more tiny stitching. Okay, my next project is, and thanks again for that recommendation. That was excellent. I hope I got your name right. Edwardian Moon is my next project. I stitched on it for 1 hour and 6 minutes, and it was 3.37% of my stitching. This is what it looks like. Oh, sorry. And I ended up doing 244 stitches. Okay, so I had already done like the clouds on this side. I'd finished those and was working on the moon. And so then this week I was able to move on with that, and I worked further on the moon, just expanded that, and started working on the clouds over here. But I only worked on it for an hour. If you watched my last video, I was like, I'm going to work on this when I sit outside for half an hour at a time. And I only worked on this for 1 hour, which lets you know that in the last 2 weeks, I did only sit outside for 2 days, half an hour each. So next week or this week, maybe I'll sit outside more, but I don't know. I feel like I'm getting very bored of my projects in my rotation, and that I want to switch that up a little. Like, I'm okay with some of them, but some of the other ones I'm like, ugh, I feel like I've been stitching on you so much recently. I want to try some other things. Anyway, I am glad that any progress got done on this. But honestly, it's been like over a week since I've touched it. Okay, my next project is something that you've already seen this video. So I ended up spending 1 hour and 16 minutes, which is 3.89% of my stitching time, on this, which is Thistle, which is supposed to be a cross-stitch bookmark, but I had the plan to make it into some earrings. And that is what I'm wearing today. So I ended up finishing stitching these and then forming them into earrings. So this is, I guess I can take it out. So I ended up, instead of keeping it upright, I ended up flipping them because I just thought it looked nicer. But either would be fine, honestly. This is 46 count as well. 1 over 2. And I really loved stitching it. I just did what the pattern called for as far as colors. I ended up doing 273 stitches on it. And then it did take me several hours to finish do the finishing on it. They are a little bit heavier than I was hoping. I wanted like a thicker cardstock, so I ended up using that granola box, which is why I had some bits that were already painted this purple color for these. It's because I had painted them the granola box purple for these, and then I just took some of the like leftover bits that I had cut off and then used them to back these. I finished these before those, but I had taken them and then cut them to the size that I wanted. I glued both sides down and then glued both tops down. And then I stitched around like through the cardboard on all sides. And I did it on the front and the back. So there's 2 pieces of cardstock in here that I glued together, and I don't know if that's cardstock or cardboard. I guess it's cardboard, but it's like very, very thin. And having both of those pieces, it makes it a little bit heavier than I like, but they are still very light for like the size of the earrings that they are. Like, I have heavier earrings that are smaller than this, honestly, but I do really like how they turned out. I think they're stunning. And if you missed my last video, this is a tribute to one of my favorite artists who died last month. His name was Thistle. And her real name, her government name, was Katie Greenwood Ross. And so while I was finishing stitching this and then also doing the finishing of like putting these on the cardstock and stitching them together and things like that, I ended up listening to a bunch of her music. So she was like a physical artist with like her hands, and then also like sang and played many instruments and wrote music and all sorts of things. So I ended up listening to a bunch of her music while I was finishing that, and it was just very like cathartic, and I really enjoyed that. So I'm gonna also leave linked below her Um, I'm just gonna do like her YouTube music, um, like artist profile, but I'm sure you could find her on different platforms as well. I personally use YouTube Music because I have YouTube Premium, but you can probably find her on anything, and she has such a wide array of genres. I don't even know how to begin to describe her music style. And not every song sounds so different, but so many of her songs sound so drastically different from each other, and her voice is so like ethereal and enchanting. Her voice doesn't sound similar to Enya's, but her voice, listening to her, gives me the same feeling that listening to Enya gives me, if that makes sense. Where it's like Enya just puts you almost into this like trance state because it's just so like beautiful and ethereal, and that's how listening to Thistle Thistle / Katie is for me. Not every single song, but like most of her songs. It's just so stunning. Anyway, so there's my Thistle earrings, my tribute to her, and I'm really happy with how they turned out, and I think she would really love them. She is also the reason for the big hair and the stars on my face today. I just wanted to do a whole look dedicated to her. Okay, the next project that I wanted to talk about is another tribute piece. It is, last week was my brother's 5-year death anniversary, and I ended up starting a memorial piece for him. I thought I would end up getting more like progress stitched on this, but honestly, kind of the like whole week of his death day was, the entire time I was like thinking about him and grieving him, I was just crying in bed. I did not feel like stitching. So I only ended up stitching on this for an hour and 42 minutes, which was 5.19% of my stitching time. I didn't stitch on it very much because the time that I was thinking about him and spending time like processing stuff, I didn't feel like it. Honestly, I was like, I'm not stitching, but I do really love this piece, and I'm excited to continue stitching it over this month and next month, and it probably won't take long to finish because I feel like I'm already, I don't know, like a quarter of the way done. But this is, oh, I haven't said who the other things are from, by the way. Edwardian Moon is Night Spirit Studio, and the Thistle Thistle piece is from Flo Wren Studio. So this is the mini mallard duck scene cross-stitch pattern, and this is from Ashby Patterns. And I link all my patterns down below. And that is what I'm stitching in for my brother. One of our nicknames for him was Hallard the Mallard, or Hallard the Mallard Duck. And so I genuinely cannot see a mallard without thinking about my brother. And I saw this when I was scrolling on Etsy a few months ago, and I was like, I don't know if I was specifically looking for mallards or if I saw it organically. But either way, the second I saw this, I was like, I'm stitching this in June. Anyway, this is what I've stitched so far. It's such a small piece that I genuinely do think this is like a quarter of it, and it's only taken a couple hours. I think this would be like less than 10 hours of stitching for sure. But it's been very fun to stitch, and as far as like the stitching itself, mentally it has been depressing to stitch. Honestly. This fabric is Atomic Ranch Dreamy Lake, and it's a 40 count. anyway, that's my progress, and I really, really love it. I think it's, I just think it's such a beautiful and cute pattern. There's also in it like little cattails, and I don't specifically associate cattails with him, but I do associate cattails with a place that both he and I worked. Um, we both worked at a place where cattails grew outside of, and I remember one time, like, when I was a kid, before I even worked there, like, picking one and taking it home and fluffing it up all over our backyard. So it's like, there's like extra layers to this one. But anyway, I really love it, and I don't really have much more to say about that except for just missing my brother. The next project is Templar Prophecy, and this one I didn't make a lot of progress on. I only ended up doing 2 hours and 49 minutes, which is 8.15% of my stitching time over the 2 weeks. I'm doing everything except for the 2 borders, and I ended up doing 587 stitches, which was which has brought it actually to 22.49%. So I'm like at 22.5%, which is pretty good. In total, I'm at 13,511 stitches. And for Edwardian Moon, I'm at 29%. Anyway, this is where Templar Prophecy was the last time you saw it. So I just finished the dragon. And then I ended up bringing down this. I put in this whole section right here, including that star. And then I also ended up bringing down this. I put in this butterfly and this whole motif with those almost 600 stitches that I did. But this was supposed to be my Long Dog Leap Day Zao, and I think I'm going to call that concept quits. I don't know that, like, working on something consistently enough to get it done in, like, that short of a designated amount of time, it's just stressing me out. I'm like, well, it's already June, and I was supposed to be at a quarter as of February, and now it's June, and I'm not even at 25% yet, and blah, 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 and I need to catch up, and I don't know. I only like stitching on this for like maybe 200, 300 stitches at a time, and then I want to put it down for like a week. And if I stitch on it 300 stitches at a time, it's not going to be done in like 2.5 years. It's not. And it's stressing me out. So I think I'm going to do something that I haven't done in the last 2.5 years, in the last year and a half. I'm going to take this out of my nerd hoop, and I'm going to put it away for a little bit, and I'm just going to stitch on it when I feel like it, because I love this pattern, and it's not bringing me joy to try to force myself to stitch on it every week and rush through it. I don't know if that makes sense. It's just not the kind of pattern that I get absorbed in. There are some patterns that I can be stitching and then all of a sudden 3 hours have gone by and I didn't realize. This is one that it's like, okay, I've stitched for an hour, I'm ready to switch, or I've stitched for half an hour, I'm ready to switch. Like, I only do a little bit before I'm ready to move on to a different project. And that's fine. Like, I love my time stitching on it. I'm stitching with a Silks for You, which is beautiful. I love stitching on it. It's a very fun and soothing stitch, but every moment stitching on this has felt stressful because of this self-imposed timeline of long dog leap day sale. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of, like, I like, the problem is that I love a deadline and I love a goal, and deadlines and goals really work for me, and I'm usually really good at keeping up with those. My self-imposed deadlines and goals, I crush those normally. And for this one, I haven't been able to, so I just feel like I'm perpetually falling behind, falling behind, falling behind. And it's stressing me out. So I'm going to take it out of this, set it aside for a month, 2, 3, who knows, and eventually I'll pull it back out, and maybe I'll be invigorated. But this looming, I don't know, this looming feeling of every single day, why are you not working on Templar Prophecy? Why are you not working on it? Is just making me not love it when I do love it. Okay, that's it. Moving on. But you probably won't see that for a long time. So I'm letting you know. My next project is Nature's Journey. So this is by Sprouting Lupin. I think I've been saying it wrong. This is in the Just Cross Stitch 2025 magazines. You would need the spring, summer, fall, or autumn, I don't know which one they say, and winter editions for this year. And this is what it looks like. Oh, is it not the most stunning thing you've ever seen? And I am currently, this week I ended up doing the last 2 weeks, I ended up doing 4 hours and 32 minutes, which was 13.9% of my stitching time. And I am not thrilled at my progress. And again, these are like my self-imposed deadlines, but then I'm not meeting them, and I'm like, oh, I'm not keeping up with the stitch along. I think the problem is I have like me deadlines, and that these are deadlines set by other people, and then I'm failing to keep up with them because this is like a yearly stitch along, that one's like a 4-year stitch along, and I'm not keeping up with them, and then I feel like a big failure, and I don't like that. Anyway, this is where I'm at right now. So I added mushrooms, I added this thingy, I added this blue flower, I added to this, I added this, and the bee, the super cute freaking bee, and this is the entirety of page 1 done. So I still need to do the entirety of page 2, and then the entirety of the summer portion. And I just feel stressed, and I don't know why. I feel like I'm in such a place with my stitching right now. Like a month ago or so, I was stitching on this and it was like feeding my soul, and now I'm like struggling more with paper patterns than I have been before that. So I think this is also the same thing where it's like, I think I might put it away, or maybe I'll leave it out. I think just looking at it is stressing me out, even though it's so beautiful and I love it so much. I think it is stunning, incredible, phenomenal, one of the best patterns I've ever seen in my life. I want it on my wall so badly, but you know, if it takes me extra time to finish, that's okay. And I could finish this if I did like, I think it's like 13 or 14 squares the pattern each week to catch up for fall, the fall equinox or whatever. But I don't know if I want to do that. I've been thinking about it, and it just feels like a lot. I think I just have been stitching every single week. I'm coming here and I'm showing you the same like 5, 6, 7 patterns over and over and over again. I'm like making great progress on them, but I just want to stitch it out. I want to pull out other things that I haven't worked on yet. This one I just started less than a month ago, and I've already done, let's see, I started this on, oh no, I started it over a month ago. I started it on the 10th of May, and I've already done 19 hours on it, which is a lot for me. I tend to hop around projects for a lot, so this has already gotten like so much progress for me this year. And I think I'm just ready to like stitch on something else for a little bit, and maybe I'll come back very soon. Maybe instead of like rushing to finish the spring section, I'll like work on the fall or the summer section next or something. Like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Maybe I'll do something funky, but these goals that I'm not setting myself necessarily, but that are stitch alongs set by other people, are stressing me out. And I think I just need to like reset all my stitching for the most part. Okay. Next thing, sorry for the long tangents. I've just been thinking about this a lot. Okay, but the next project I'm so happy about, I'm so proud about, is Welcome to Erebor by Country Magic Stitch. I'll have it linked below. And this is right here. I didn't pull pictures to show you, but she has a bunch of these, which I've talked about. Ones that are, maybe I'll try to grab some for next week if I remember, but a ton of Lord of the Rings ones, a ton of Star Wars ones, whatever. And I had talked about this in my last video. I didn't even remember. And then I was talking to my sister, one of my sisters, a few days ago, and she was like, so you were stitching on some Star Wars projects? And I was like, no, I'm not stitching on any Star Wars projects. Like, I have in the past, but I'm not stitching on any right now. I'm like, where did she get that idea? That's so random. And then I realized it's because I was talking about these, and she had watched the video and had thought that they were whips, maybe. But I'm not stitching on them right now. Anyway, I thought that was so funny. She was, oh, I love you. Thank you. Thanks for, thanks for that. But she was like, how many Star Wars whips do you have? How many Star Wars projects do you have? And I was like, none. And she was like, oh. I was like, oh, I own a lot of Star Wars projects. I just haven't started them. Don't you know we hoard cross-stitch projects? Anyway, this is what it looked like last time. I was so close to the end. This was around 90%. And I was trying to do 5% a week to finish this up. It's been 2 weeks. And it's done. So I ended up stitching on this for, let's see, did I already say this? 5 hours and 16 minutes, which is 16.13% of my stitching time. And I ended up doing 2,192 stitches on it. And there it is, isn't it wonderful? I love it so much. So next I'm going to start, I asked my husband, and he says that I should start, because I'm going to try to do one a year for our anniversary. Our anniversary is next week, so I wanted to have this done by next week, and it's done. But next one I'm going to start is Welcome to Mordor, or Visit Mordor, or whatever it's called. But I'll have by Country Magic Stitch linked below. And there it is. Welcome to Erebor is done. I ended up really enjoying this. And what was really cool is, so I looked back at I still have my notes from my very first Flosstube video. And in my very first Flosstube video, I have it there. And it says that I had done 4 hours of stitching. And my estimated stitching on this project is that it would take me 53 hours and 50 minutes, roughly. When I was only 4 hours into the project, that it would take me about 50 more hours left to finish it. And I found those stats. That was from January of 2024. And now looking at it now for this most recent update, it took me 54 hours and 15 minutes to stitch this in its entirety. So I was within the first 4 hours of stitching, got within half an hour of my prediction. Isn't that crazy? That's so cool. I love that. Stats are awesome. I love spreadsheets. um, so anyway, that was awesome to look back at. I think the reason it went up a little bit is just because I started in this corner, which is very block heavy, of like just a bunch of the same color, and I wasn't switching colors as much. And then once I got to this part and this part, I switched colors a lot more, so my average did go down a little bit. My average at the end, my average stitches per hour, let's see. What ended up being 415 stitches per hour, because it's half cross and it's so blocky. That's not, my average is not normally that high. And back in January, a year and a half ago, my average was 418 stitches an hour. So my average just went down like a tiny bit, and I think that was mostly just like in these color changes, because it wasn't as color change heavy up here. But I think that's incredible that like within the first 4 hours, I was able to clock within half an hour exactly how long this would take me to stitch. And I think that's phenomenal. And I think spreadsheets are the best thing ever. I love spreadsheets for stitching. I also think it's very cool that I haven't showed it yet, but Contessa with Squid, when I did my very first Flosstube, was my 17th oldest project. And now at this time, there's a few whips that I UFO'd, but then there's like 9 that I finished. And now Contessa with Squid is my 5th oldest project. Isn't that crazy? It's like, I just feel like I've done a lot in the past year and a half, and I'm just pleased with what I've gotten done in the past year and a half as far as my stitching. Anyway, okay, last time. I need to wash it. I don't think it will be framed anytime soon. It's kind of an odd width and height. It's 4 3/4 by 6. And if I even did like a 5 by 7, most 5 by 7s I was looking at are actually 4.5. So it would cut off some of the words on the side. And I hate that. So I might get a custom frame for it. Not get it custom framed, but I might buy a custom frame and frame it myself. We'll see though. First I need to wash it, and that's the first step. Okay. The next project is one that you haven't seen. It's one I've been meaning to start for a while, but I had never mentioned it. I don't know where I was going with that. It is by Nara X Stitch Patterns. It's called Blue Dancers, and it was 2,795 stitches, and it took me 7 hours and 11 minutes to stitch, and it ended up being 21.98% of my stitching time. And I don't need to show you a before, after, or what it looks like, because here it is. I finished it. This is it in its entirety. This is 28 count. I also forgot to mention this is 40 white. This is 46. This is 28 2/1/2 cross, and this was 28 2/1/2 cross as well. But there we go, Blue Dancers. It's a Degas, and it stitched very quickly. What was my average for that? 399.29 stitches. Well, technically, It's a little lower than that. Because I stitched a little bit longer. It was like 390 stitches an hour, I think is what it actually was. Anyway, because I don't usually, in my spreadsheet, I don't put the minutes in. I only round, but there it is. I love it so much, don't you? These are actually for the same sister. I asked if I could stitch her something, and she said she only wanted things that were this big. She was like, can you just stitch me something this big? And I said, sure. But she was a ballerina. She did ballet for a while. And she also loves Monet, so I chose these two for her. And I'm so excited to show you the frames that I have. So I'm going to attempt to do real framing for like the first time in my life. I have, what is it called? I've laced one project before, but it was, I know there's some people watching me who don't watch Flosstube and literally just watch me. Some friends and family, I love you, thank you. So lacing is where you like get the fabric and like line it up and then literally like lace it and pull it tight, almost like a corset. And then the other most common way is to get it tight around like whatever you're using inside. A lot of people do like foam core or a foam board, is that they do pins. And I'm going to try the pin method. I have done lacing once before and it turned out very well, but I just haven't done it since. And that was like in 2022. That was a long time ago. Or might have been 2023. I don't remember. And it was a gift and I don't have it anymore. I gave it away. Anyway, so I have these. They are frames, but they do not have like backs or anything. So I'm going to do foam core, or foam board, I mean. I'm going to do foam board. I'm going to pin and then just try to adhese it in here. Maybe with glue. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do. And then maybe make them into magnets. I'm going to have to talk to my sister and see if she wants them as magnets, or maybe she could do whatever those like things are that you can stick them to your wall and then like just pull to release, or she can do something to stick them. But I'm going to try to lace them and then like just like stick them in here. So they will be sticking out a little bit. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it, but I want it very centered in here. But anyway, here are my two. So here is the Blue Dancers, and this is the frame I have for it. Isn't that beautiful? Ugh. And then this is my Monet and the frame that I have for it. And if I can figure out how to make these look nice with the foam and get them in here well and laced and even and everything, I am going to attempt to take back some cross stitches that I gave to a different sister and reframe them in more beautiful frames. Because I think these are so pretty. They do like look a little fakey. I don't know if I'm going to like paint them and redo it to look a little prettier myself, because they are very like shiny and I think it looks a little odd, but they are really pretty. I like the detail on them, and I can leave them linked below. Anyway, I'm happy that I have them. I bought these at the same time as I also bought these. These are the reason I was looking for the tiny frames, is I knew I was going to do these two for my sister. And then I also bought these at the same time. So these are my last tiny frames. and these are in between. These are smaller. So I have bigger tiny frames that I can also frame stuff with, and I do intend to do that. These are just resin. I think these ones are resin or as well. Maybe they're just plastic. I don't even know. But anyway, tiny frame saga, and these are really stunning. Okay. My ramble of the century, but I'm very proud. And if you want to stitch like a full coverage, like a Haid or a unconventional X stitch or something, and you want to get an idea of like how you like to stitch full coverage, or like I've never stitched on 28 count before, or I've never stitched on 25 count before. Do I like full cross or half cross? Do I like stitching from the top left or the top right or the bottom left or the bottom right? How do I like confetti? Things like that. If you're trying to figure that out, but you don't want to just like waste your time and money on like starting something and you hate it, I would do one of these because it's the exact same experience as stitching a Haid, but you just get a little piece of art instead. This one was definitely like more confetti heavy because you're like jumping all over the place. The Monets, I would say, are like a little bit more the experience of a traditional Haid because of that. But this one, even then, it's like with all the dithering in the background and the dithering and the dresses. It is, and I think they're charted very beautifully. I really like them. If I look, the water lilies are from Sunset and Sea Design. So I can leave the water lilies linked below. But both the things that I've stitched from Nara X Stitch and from Sunset and Sea, I would say both of them give you the experience of stitching a normal full coverage. Whereas like this one does not give you the same sensation as stitching a Haid or an unconventional X stitch because there's no confetti. You're just stitching blocks of color. And so you might get an idea of if you like stitching from the top or the bottom or etc. But it's a totally different experience, in my opinion. Whereas this is like an almost identical experience, but this is only 3,000 stitches, whereas like the smallest Haid is like, what, 13,000? And that's if you're doing like one of like the story keeps or something. So anyway. Okay, my last project that I'm going to talk about is Contessa with Squid, who I've already mentioned. So I am trying to do 33% on her every week. I ended up doing 8 hours and 11 minutes on her, and she was 25.10% of my stitching time. Phenomenal. And I'm really happy with my progress. I ended up doing, so I would have needed to do like 66% since I'm doing 2 weeks worth. And I did manage to do that. I ended up getting to 68.68%. So I did meet that goal, and I ended up doing 2,795 stitches. So I was mostly working in this area. I didn't touch this area at all. And this is what it looks like. I'm so happy with how it's turning out. This is like the only project I feel like out of my whole stack and my duck that I like want to keep actively working on right now. Everything else I want to put away, and I want to pull out new things, because I just feel very like burnt out touching the same things every single week. So, but this one I think I can get another 33% on this week. I'm excited to do it. It takes me like 4-ish hours, as you can tell, since eight hours got me both weeks. And it's just like very soothing and mindless and fun and satisfying. And I just do it in like a day, maybe 2 days, and then I don't touch it for another week. And so I don't like get burnt out on it as much as these, because these ones I can't do big bursts on them. Whereas this one I can sit down on stitch for 3 hours and the time vanishes and I just get absorbed. I can't get absorbed in these other ones as much as this one. Whereas like this, since it's the exact same experience as stitching this I stitched in 3 days, the 7 hours. The first night I stitched like 1 hour, but then the other 3 hours I stitched in 2 different sessions. I just sat down and then just zoned out for 3 hours, and it was like, so I don't know. I love it. Anyway, full coverage is definitely my niche, and I want to pull out some more full coverages to work on. I think I'm going to start another mini masterpiece for myself because I've given away the other ones that I've stitched. Anyway, those are my stitching for the week. I ended up doing 8,571 tracked stitches, but I also did the little tiny stitches that I showed you at the beginning. I ended up doing the stitches on my mallard duck, and I also did the stitches on Nature's Journey. I definitely did several hundred on there, so I think I definitely passed the 9,000 stitches. I would love to pull out some projects that I only did that I haven't touched at all this year. That would be my ideal. And really quickly, I want to show you, so my sister, when I've given her my mini masterpieces, this is a different sister. This is one that I stitched for her. It's a Monet's Garden. I just put it in this like very boring basic frame that I got from Michael's. And it's definitely off-center and awful. And then I also did this one. And I ended up using just like blue construction paper to like crop off the white. I don't know. I was trying my best. This was in 2023, both of these. So I stitched a couple of them before. I also got these earrings like custom made for her, based off of wanting to give her this cross stitch. So the artist that made it was Wiser Last Studio. If they're still in business, I'll leave them linked below. But anyway, this is my sister's favorite painting, so I stitched that for her and got her earrings of it. But if I can figure out a better way to make my tiny cross stitch and frame them with like foam core, and I have pins. I bought pins today. I need to buy my foam. Keep saying foam core. If I buy poster board, foam board, I will buy acid free. If I buy that and am able to pin for my other sister, I'm going to try to take these back and put them in prettier frames, because my sister does like ornate frames. This is the other cross stitch that I ended up making for her. And this is the frame that it's in. And these are the kind of frames that she likes and I like. And so, anyway. If I can figure it out, she will get more beautiful frames as well. I just didn't know what I was doing almost 2 years ago it was like 2 years ago when I did the first one, and then the end of 23 when I did the second one for her. So she will get more beautiful frames if I can figure out how to do it. Okay, I think that's all the cross stitching at this point. I know it's been an hour already, but I did have some books that I wanted to talk about. So if you're only here for the stitching, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. But really quickly about books. So, I used to read 200 400 books a year. And I'd been doing that for like 8 years or something. And then I lost all love for reading. And I was very sad about it. And I've been trying to get more back into it. And I finally read a couple books that I really loved. So, I figured I would talk about both the books that I have loved, also the books that I haven't loved, and some books that I'm reading specifically because I am doing the spring equinox prompts, even though spring is over. That's okay. I'm doing it this month. It was a readathon that happened in April. I talked about it at the end of my last video if you want to see. But I have a list of prompts. Things like a book with all capitals in the book title, a book with fruit on the cover, a book with a musical term in the title, a book with witches or the occult, a book with, I don't know, just different things. A book you already plan to read this month. And, let's see. I wanted to kind of do this to like push myself to read more, and then also this is like the first part of a readathon that happens every August that I really love, which is the autumn equinox, the magical readathon autumn equinox. So I really wanted to do this, but it pushed me to read some books that I wouldn't have picked up anytime soon, and so that's part of the joy of a readathon. Okay, anyway, let's get into it and talk about the books that I've read. Okay. So, there's 14 prompts that I'm supposed to read. I like to do all the prompts. You're technically only supposed to choose like a few, but I like to do all of them because I'm very extra. So far, I have done 6 of them, and we're halfway through the month. So I'm definitely like behind, but I would say, considering that I haven't basically read at all since, I mean, I've read here and there, but I essentially haven't read consistently since October 2023. I would say I'm doing very well with reading, and I'm excited about reading again for the first time in a long time. Okay, so the prompts that I've fulfilled so far, I'm just going to go through the ones that I fulfilled, and then I'm also going to talk about some books that I've DNF'd because I'm not going to count most DNFs. But I am going to count one. Okay, DNF stands for a book you did not finish. DNF. But people, Book Roast, who's the person who like hosts this readathon, I think has said before that if you read over 50% of it and you decide to DNF it, you can count it. And I never have counted DNFs for readathons before, but I did read 50% of this book. I read 62% of it. And I simply cannot read another second. So I am DNFing it. I refuse to read another second, and it's Of Monsters and Mainframes. Go away. There we go. Of Monsters and Mainframes. And this is by Barbara Truelove. And I hate it so much. I cannot express how much I hate. And I thought I would love it. Look at that cover. How can you look at this and think I would not love it? And basically the pitch of this is Dracula in space. Dracula on a spaceship. And it's like, hell yeah, I wanted that. But I got 62% in. And I cannot read another second. This is delightful, unhinged, and obscenely compelling. This should have said, I'm sorry, I'm so mean. I'm honestly so mean. But this should have been like cringy, whingy, icky or something. I don't know. Or like cringy, whingy, like you never want to read it again. It's just like, I'm so annoyed because I think the ideas in this book are wonderful. I think the compelling part, the reason I got 62% in is that it is compelling. The ideas are great. The writing is so, like, it feels so, like, I don't know how to, like, not be mean and also not, like, the thing is like, I read cheesy books. I read a lot of books that people would, like, turn their nose up at. I read a lot of, like, romance. I read monster romance and smut, and, like, I read stuff that has bad writing a lot of the time. If I'm saying the writing is bad, it was so bad. Ooh. It's just like every part that you think the author is going to, you think the author is like thinking that they really wrote a super great character, but the writing is like very cringy. I don't know if I'm expressing this well, and I feel like I'm pausing too much and this is not going to be an interesting review, and I feel bad for like shitting on this book. But basically, it's Dracula in space. And I think that part was so interesting. So basically, it's a bunch of little vignettes that take place on this spaceship, and it's from the spaceship's point of view. And she has the vast misfortune that a bunch of horror slash classic sci-fi monsters keep coming onto her ship and killing all her passengers. And I think it's such an interesting such interesting ideas, the way Dracula is like written about in this, and like how would Dracula be handled in space? How would a spaceship perceive Dracula slash these other monsters? And I don't want to say the monsters because I think that is like kind of spoilery, but I'll say some that are real and some that aren't, because I don't want to like spoil things, but stuff along the idea of like, say like, well, Dracula obviously, but like Jekyll and Hyde, like Cthulhu, just like classic horror sci-fi, like Creature of the Black Lagoon, like those kinds of vibes. And then also like booky things that like classic sci-fi and horror books, like those are the vibes, like, and I think it's great, but then the way that it's written, I was just going, ugh, ick, oh no, and I just kept wanting to put it down. And there were so many times I did a big huge long rant to my husband about all the writing that I hated, but I can't say it to you without spoiling things, so I can't. But let's just say I hated it so much. And I think the same concepts and ideas from a different writer could have been incredible. But this made me want to, like, I was listening to it and it made me want to like stab my eardrums out. I hated it so much because the writing was awful. Okay, that's it. I really need to stop like ranting about this book now. I'm just was so disappointed. love a space horror. Okay, the next thing is and that was for a book with all capitals, the book title, which this certainly does fulfill. But this book really bummed me out. Okay, so the next book on the list is a book you already planned to read this month, and I ended up reading The House of My Mother by Sherry Frankie. And I mean, of course, reading a book like this is not going to be like fun. If you don't know who Sherry Frankie is, she was exploited by her parents, grown up as like a family vlogger channel. She was exploited for like views and tons of money, and everything about her life was documented online. So she talks about all that, and her siblings also going through that. And then also her mom really went off the deep end, and after she'd already left the house, and like abused her siblings even more drastically and stuff like that. And her mother went to prison and pled guilty and stuff. And I don't know too much about all of that. I know enough though. And the thing is that I feel like this was written, I mean, I don't ever want to tell like a cult survivor, because there are like single family cults and stuff, and she definitely is in a cult. I don't want to tell a cult survivor that like when is the appropriate time to tell their story and stuff. This just feels like it's so soon after everything, and it felt very, I'm just, if she ever wants to share her story when she's older, I'm very interested in what she will have to say reflecting back in like 10 or 20 years. And I feel like maybe that's where I'll leave my thoughts on this one. I feel like she's still incredibly indoctrinated. And it makes me very sad. I think she's only very recently out of that traumatic situation, and I think the way she writes about things definitely shows that. Instead of like, I don't know. Okay, I'll move on. I don't really necessarily have a rating for that though. I think I'm gonna leave that unrated. The next book that I read is Skunk and Badger, by Amy Timberlake, and pictures by John Klassen. So I would say I feel indifferent to this. It was okay. It was cute. And you're probably like, it's a children's book. Why would you expect anything better and bigger than that? But this illustrator, the person who drew the illustrations, I think is a great writer. He ended up doing, what is it called? The Skull? I think he wrote that one. Let me look it up. Yeah, The Skull, a Tyrolean Folktale. And I read that one last year or the year before, and I loved it, and I gave that one 5 stars. So, and it's like even shorter than this. This was like 80 pages, I think. No, 120. But this, the best part about this was the illustrations. I really loved John Klassen's illustrations, but I felt like the writing was fine and the story was fine. I think it's definitely trying to like play into that frog and toad. Here's some illustrations. It's so good. I love his illustrations. Also, it's definitely like an art style that I really adore. But, and there's also some color illustrations. Chickens play a big role in this book. This is an arc, by the way, so I don't know exactly how these color illustrations are laid out throughout the book. It might be different than It is in here. I'm sure it is because I just looked at something at the beginning of the book and I was like, that's a spoiler for the end. But I'm sure it's at the end in the Not arc. I got this arc from an old workplace of mine because I work around books, or I have for a long time. But I think it's trying to play into that like frog and toad vibe. But I think without the illustrations, it would have so much less whimsy. Like, the illustrations are really what gives this any sort of charm. Because without it, it just felt very meh and weird, and I just, like, honestly couldn't care less. And I feel like that's sad. And I love children's books. I think children's books are great. But it's like, really is just the illustrations that I love. And I don't think it has as much, even though Frog and Toad are shorter, I just think they have more grip and charm. And this is coming from someone who did not grow up with Frog and Toad. I did not read a Frog and Toad book until 2023 or, yeah, I think 2023. So I think those books are great. So I don't know. It was fine. I think it would be more fun for a kid because it's just like wacky, silly, goofy. All these crazy things are happening. But I think the humor just didn't hit for me. And again, without the illustrations, I would never think about it again. But the illustrations are just like so cute. All right, my next book is, But the Skull by John Klassen. I freaking love that. Oh, so good. Okay, the next book. So, The House of My Mother I read for a book you already planned for this month. For Skunk and Badger, it was for a color wheel generator. I just generated a color, and I got, like, this color, or, like, this color. It was, like, a brownish, like an orangey brown, or like a beigey orangey brown. And then for the prompt, a random country generator, where you just randomly generate some countries and then choose a book where the author's from that country. I got the country Austria, and I was looking up some Austrian authors, and I got Franz Kafka is from either where Austria is now or where it used to be, because some borders have changed. But I ended up reading The Metamorphoses, which is in here, and it was so interesting. I never ended up reading this in high school because I was homeschooled and missed out on a lot of normal things. But I think this would have been such an interesting book to discuss. I really liked it a lot. This is a book that I've always put off reading because I was like, I don't know. I've always thought of myself as being homeschooled. I've always thought of myself as quite stupid and too illiterate to understand a lot of things and references that like my peers are able to, and I just thought that the themes in this book, in this short story, would be too much for me, even though I didn't know too much about. I just knew it was about a guy that turned into a bug, but I was just like, I don't know, everybody says it's a really good book to discuss with people, and I was like, well, what am I gonna get out of that reading it on my own? And I just thought I'd be too stupid to really enjoy reading it on my own. And honestly, this was the first book that I feel like I've enjoyed reading. I'm not really going over these books like in order necessarily, but I'm just going through my list and the way the prompts were laid out, and then I've been reading them and randomly. But this is like the first book that I've like enjoyed reading, I feel like in a long time. And I was enjoying thinking about like what it means and like what people owe each other and like all these things. And I was just like, I don't know, made me feel like, I'm sure I didn't catch every meaning and everything, but I was like, oh, maybe I'm not super stupid. I don't know. I ended up actually really enjoying it, and that made me feel happy. So, but also the book was really depressing. What a depressing story. But yeah, just about a guy that turns into a beetle. I can recommend, if you haven't read it, if you just want a short little bizarre read. It's one of the weirdest things I've ever read. And I think the thing also is like that's like the first time I have felt gripped by a book in a very long time. Okay, but my true love of all loves, the first book that hasn't been a reread, because I reread books fairly often, but the first book that I've read that wasn't a reread, that I feel like I've loved in so long, and longer than I feel like I can remember, is Pure Nessie by Susanna Clarke. I read this for the prompt of reading a book with a missing person, and I will leave that at that. I loved this so much. I didn't know what it was about when going into it, and I've heard so many people talk about this book over the years, and nobody, I feel like, has ever told me and mentioned that this is Chronicles of Narnia fan fiction. This is The Magician's Nephew fan fiction. I loved it. If this was your favorite Chronicles of Narnia book, this is the book for you as an adult. The entire time, this does start out with a quote from The Magician's Nephew, so I was already like, oh, Magician's Nephew. But the entire time I was reading this, I was like, oh, it feels like we're in one of the pools of water. Like we went through one of the pools in the wood between worlds. Like we're in one of the pools. And it was so good, and I was obsessed. And it is quite slow, and it's just a lot of descriptions, and it's about just this guy living in the house. People said it's kind of similar to House of Leaves a little bit, not in the way that it's written, but in the way that it's just like the house is unfolding, and it's just this weird house that this person is like stuck in and just fending for themselves in this big house full of water and sea creatures and birds, and I don't know, it was just everything my brain and soul and body needed. I devoured it in less than a day. I couldn't put it down. I really want to reread The Magician's Nephew now, because like the entire book, I was just like, this is The Magician's Nephew for adults. This is The Magician's Nephew for adults. And then the further and further I got into it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is The Magician's Nephew for the adults. Like, I could not stop thinking about this book the entire time. And so I really want to read it, which is why I pulled it down. But this is, Pure Nessie was so good. But yeah, if this is your favorite Chronicles of Narnia book, you have to read Pure Nessie. And if you don't like this book, and if you've never wondered what were in the other worlds, then I wouldn't recommend Pure Nessie, because you probably would think it's very boring. Okay. Finally, the last book that I read is a book for the prompt, a dragon in the title, on the cover, in the story. And I ended up reading Brighter Than Scale, Swifter Than Flame by Neon Yang. And I am very disappointed. It wasn't bad and I didn't hate it, but I love some of the other books I've read by Neon Yang. and this is their newest book. And it's about like a dragon hunter who can kind of wield this magic to kill dragons that nobody else can. And so the king trains her to kill dragons, and then she gets sent to she gets taken to her family, trained for many years, and then she gets sent to this neighboring kingdom to hunt dragons there, even though she shouldn't be. And it's sapphic, and I thought it would be all good things, but it was so boring. I don't know, and just after reading other things from Neon Yang, where I just think they're so complex and interesting, and every second is like, oh my gosh, this magic system is incredible. This felt like it was written by a completely different author. I don't know. This had zero surprising or interesting things happen. It's like everything I could guess, everything, not that I'm trying to guess, and I'm very rarely surprised in books anyway, because I feel like I've just read so many books, like I've read thousands of books at this point. I've just read so many books that I think it's hard to be surprised, but that's not the point of reading for me and the love of reading for me. I'm very rarely surprised by books, and so that's not the point, but this, it was like just so long before anything happened, I was like, okay, I know exactly where this is going. And then everything played out exactly how I thought it was going to go. And I was just like, okay, so that was a whole lot of words for nothing. And it was very boring and very uninteresting, and the characters were very boring and uninteresting, and everything was so boring. And I don't know, it was just like, it wasn't bad. I didn't hate it. Like, how much, like, I viscerally hated of Monsters and Mainframes. Like, I didn't hate this. I just thought it was boring as hell. And considering that I know Neon Yang has written, let's see, what is their book called? The Tesser, what is it called? The Black Tides of Heaven? What is this series called? Tenserate? Maybe it's, but The Black Tides of Heaven by Neon Yang, I think is so interesting and one of the best fantasy books I've ever read. I didn't love the sequel, but I still liked the sequel. But like The Black Tides of Heaven, I love so much. One of my favorite books of all time. And just the fact that this came from the same author, I'm just like, honestly, is astounding. I also don't, I mean, this isn't a reason why I dislike this book, but I also don't love, like, the main character's is disabled, but because magic is not disabled when fighting. And it's just like, it's interesting. It's just a thought to think about. I don't know how I feel about that. But they stay disabled the whole time, so magic isn't cured. I didn't even end up even processing it, really, because I was just so bored the whole time that it gave me nothing to think about. There were no conversations about it. And anyway, boring as hell. So those are all the prompts that I finished. I still have a lot of prompts to go. And I'm excited to keep reading. Although now all I want to do is read The Magician's Nephew. Although it doesn't fit into any of my prompts. So I don't know if I can squeeze it in for one of my other books. But also I figured I would talk about some of the books that I've DNF'd recently. I know this video is so long, so I'm sorry. But before this month, I had also DNF'd 1, 2, 3 books, and throughout this month, besides Monsters and Mainframes, I've already DNF'd 4 books as well. So I'm just like sick of all these books that I'm reading. So I figured I would go touch on a few of them. So I've been reading The Wedding Rich by Erin Sterling. I'm 32% of the way in. This was for one of my prompts. I'm so uninterested, and this is the third book in the series, and I love the first two. Like, I gave them both 5 stars, which is not something I do very often, is give books 5 stars. I loved them, so the fact that I'm incredibly bored, I'm so sad. And knowing that I can feel the way that I felt about Piranesi, which isn't a way I've felt about a book in so long, knowing that I can feel that way about a book makes me never want to touch this again, because I'm like, oh, I don't have to like dread picking up a book because it's so boring, or just so like not even so boring, just so like I want to be interested. So other books that I've felt bored about: The 13th Princess by Diane Zayler. This has been on my TBR forever. It's a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses. I'm sure you can guess by the title. And this is about Zita, the 13th princess. My 12 sisters are legendary. This is like the first, I only got 8% of the way in, but it's like vibes of a mix between like Ella Enchanted, the book, not the movie, Ella Enchanted, and the Tale of Despero. I love Ella Enchanted. It's one of my favorite books, but this feels like a mimicry of it, and not in like an interesting, fun way. She's like, oh, Cook, I'm always talking to Cook and blah blah blah, and it's like trying to do the same thing, but in such like a meh way. Like, I'd rather just go read Ella Enchanted. And then, but she's like in this castle, and I don't know, all this stuff. Like, it is very much giving Tales of Despero. Anyway, so I think if you like Ella Enchanted and Tales of Despero, you could like this book. But I just couldn't get into it, and I don't know. She grows up in the kitchen because her dad hates her because she's the 13th girl, and he's like, I only want sons, and I just cannot. I'm just gonna let it go, move on with my life, read something happier, and things that are compelling. I was not interested, and I gave it almost 10%, so I'm ready to move on. I also tried to read My Life as an Ice Cream Sandwich by E.B. Savoy, and I did get 11% of the way into this, and this one wasn't bad at all. It's just not my type of story. I like books that are magical or fantastical or whatever, but this is rooted in reality, and she's just daydreams a lot. It's set in the 80s, and she's always thinking about space and aliens, and she's obsessed with like Star Wars and stuff, and it's just like not the kind of story for me. She ends up moving to Harlem, and where she's gonna stay with her father, and she's like obsessed with NASA, and is just like constantly daydreaming. And I feel like this could be a very great book for middle grade readers to read, but it's just like I'm already struggling so much to read anyway that I was just like, if I'm not gripped already by 11%, I'm gonna put it down. And I just prefer fantastical books. I did get it as an ARC like many years ago, and I'm just ready to pass it along, and maybe a child will love that somewhere. I also ended up DNFing Now Entering Adamsville. I only got 4% into this because I thought the writing was, I don't know, and the characters were weird, and Adamsville is full of ghosts. They haunt the old coal mine, take long walks along the lake, and watch visitors from the storefronts. And Adamsville ghosts and their stories are the way of life, attracting visitors that keep the small town alive. I just feel like it takes a lot for me. I prefer middle grade over young adult, and I feel like it just takes a lot for me to read young adult now as much. And I just wasn't gripped. I have really loved a book by Francesca Zappia before. Eliza and Her Monsters is the one that I really loved. But I've tried to read a couple other books by Francesca Zappia at this point, and I really didn't care for them. I tried to read a different one. I think it had a blue cover maybe, and then I tried to read this one, and I just like was really off-put, and maybe I could have pushed through and liked it better, but again, I'm just like, I hate, like, reading books that I don't enjoy is making me hate reading, and I want to love reading again. And Pure Nessie, I just finished this morning. It was like the first time I felt like I've loved reading in so long, so I'm just ready to like let it go. And then a couple more books. Earlier this month, I tried to read Pandora's Lab by Paul A. Offit. 7 Stories of Science Gone Wrong. I did get 19% of the way into this. And it's just like science used for bad. The 2 stories that I got through were the ones about trans fats and opioids. And like, not only one is it just like, it was like depressing to read about, obviously, but also, which doesn't like stop me, like I read books about the Black Death, like that's been one of my favorite books, and I've like read very depressing books and really loved them, but I just felt like the writing was so boring and I was just ungripped by everything he was saying. And I feel bad because one of my sisters recommended this to me specifically. She was like, oh, I think you would really love this, and then I was like very off-put by it. I just thought it was so unboring. I think the way that everything was told, if it was written by, I think the exact same book written by a different author could have been incredible. But the way that this was written, I really didn't like the writing. And that's the same way I feel about Monsters and Mainframes. And lastly, I think the very last book, is I did try to read City of Bones by Martha Wells. I only got 4% of the way into this. And I feel bad. I feel sad because I love the Murderbot books by Martha Wells. I've read all of them multiple times. And this was just, I don't know. I didn't like the world, I didn't like the characters, I didn't like the story, I didn't like anything. I did only listen to an hour of the audiobook, but that was still 4% in, and just like every minute was excruciating. I hated it, so I don't know. I just couldn't get into it. I didn't hate it, I just couldn't get into it, so anyway. I've tried to read a bunch of things, and I just feel like everything has been a miss, and I just feel like I've lost my love of reading the last month, the last couple of years, and then finally I feel like the last doing this reading challenge and just like forcing myself to pick up books, especially ones that like I would not have picked up Pure Nessie if it wasn't for that prompt. I wouldn't have picked up the Metamorphosis if it wasn't for that prompt, like things like that. I'm just glad that I'm reading again and that I'm like loving reading again. It just feels like a part of my soul has been disconnected for the last couple of years, and I'm glad it's back. Anyway, if you're still here, thanks for listening to me ramble. I know this video has been excruciatingly long, but I appreciate it, and hopefully I'll be back in a week with a good update. I still have 8 books to read, so hopefully I'll be back in a week with 4 more books read, and make it be, because apparently I love reading again. And I will see you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.